Teams from Costa Rica, from our Earth Center on Education for Sustainable Development, located here on the campus of the University for Peace in Costa Rica. It's 8 in the morning here. And I know we have people joining us from different time zones, including Japan, and I know it's about 11 p.m., I guess, in Japan. So we want to express our gratitude and appreciation for all of you who are joining us today for this masterclass. As you know, we have Earth Charter International as part of our UNESCO chair on education for sustainable development. With the Earth Charter, we have different activities and work on research and training in education programs. And this masterclass program of 2023 is part of the various activities we organize under the framework of our UNESCO chair on education for sustainability. Today we have the opportunity and the pleasure to receive Suzana Padua, who is based in Brasilia, in Brazil, where I was born and where I come from. And Suzana has been working for decades with what we call in Portuguese IP. We're going to know, or to get to know a bit more about the work they do with IP, which is the Instituto de Pesquisas Ecológicas, or the Institute for Ecological Research. And our masterclass today is organized around the theme aligning research, education, and business with the sustainability and biodiversity conservation, and how we bring together different actors in looking at conservation and biodiversity, but also through a partnership, I would say, stakeholder approach. With this, I would like to invite all of you to write in the chat box, if you can, where your name, your organization, where you come from, so that we start. And we are going to, in the meantime, ask you if you have any specific question already or curiosity about the work that Suzana Padua has been doing in Brazil. So let me introduce Suzana. Is an Ashoka Fellow and an Avina leader, an IUCN, a member of IUCN, especially in the Commission on Education and Communication. Originally, I thought Suzana was working more in the field of conservation and even advocacy. And now I realize that she actually works in that intersection also of education and conservation and many other things. So Suzana has a master and a PhD from the US. So although we are both Brazilians, we are going to be here sharing with you or interacting with you in English. She has received several awards together with her husband. So, but I think a very interesting one that I would like to mention is one that's called the Heroes of the Planet. It's an award that Time magazine offered both her and her husband, Claudio Padua, in the year 2002. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Suzana and invite her to share with us. And I really want to say that I am myself looking forward to learn from this, and after your presentation to exchange some comments and questions. Thank you so much for being here with us, Suzana, and thank you, Vaverly, for being a wonderful bridge in this effort. Suzana.
Thank you so much. It's a big pleasure to be with you. I would like to know if the sound is okay. Okay, because I had to switch places. But it's a big pleasure. I want to thank you, Miriam, for a nice introduction, but also Vaverly, who is my friend for many years, and she has been following our work in Brazil. So I'm very honored with the invitation, and I'm a big fan of the Earth Charter since its very beginning. So it's going to be a big pleasure to share with you the years of experience in Brazil, working for conservation of biodiversity, sustainability, community involvement. I think you will have a a little bit of an idea of what we do. So I'm going to share my screen. And is it okay? Are you seeing it? Okay, great. So everything began, I'm going to tell a little bit of our personal story. Everything began with my husband, Claudio, exchanging the roots of his life. I mean, roots know the path of his life. He was in the administration business, and he was very unhappy. So he wanted to work with nature. Nobody took him seriously. So he switched profession, studied biology, and went to work with this very endangered species, the black lion tamarin. The black lion tamarin, this little animal, was considered to be extinct for almost 70 years. And when it was rediscovered, Claudio's professor at the time was the person who discovered it, and found that if this could happen, all the efforts to save the species should be done. But he left the path to Claudio to do it. And so this changed our lives entirely. I was a designer in the first, I make a joke that it's my first reincarnation in this life was as a designer, and then I switched to environmental education. So what I'm going to be sharing with you are the 31 years in conservation and sustainability through IP. We began very small, Claudio and myself, in the middle of the Atlantic forest. There was a protected area called the Morro do Diabo, Devil's Hill, and that was where the habitat for the black lion tamarin existed, where it was rediscovered. And so we went to live there, and so that Claudio could do his work. While we were living, what I found was that the community did not value nature at all. And I felt very concerned about it, because although I had not worked with conservation so far, I used to love nature anyway. And so I decided to be engaged and try to re-enchant people to nature. Because when I applied a survey among the community, and I found that people thought that the forest was useless. Why not cut it and have cows? At least they will give me milk, because the forest wasn't worth anything. And so we put together, we accepted students from the very beginning. And when in 1992, coincidentally with Rio 92, we founded IP, because we had a group of students that we began to encourage to study, continue on their masters and PhDs with themes that would enrich the protection of not only the black lion tamarin, but all that that it needed to survive in the wild. And so I began, let's say, I dedicated my life to the communities and to the education so that people could be engaged, and Claudio to the ecological aspects of studies and research, science in the field. Both of them have science, because also everything that we do in environmental education is also treated as science so that it can be taken seriously. But today, because we encourage people to join, young people, and we somehow nurture their dreams, we have around 100 people in 4 biomes: the Atlantic forest, the Amazonia, in Amazonia, Pantanal, and Cerrado. And these, in each one, there are different characteristics. You have to treat conservation in a different way. But IP was founded with this name, IP, because it stands for this beautiful, awesome tree that's it's flowering right now. It's in the middle of of winter that it begins to flower. When everything is very dry, especially in Brasilia, where I live, the ipês just bloom. And so we thought that we wanted to honor the tree. And we put together Instituto de Pesquisas Ecológicas. It changed a few times, but this was all to honor ipê as a tree. When Claudio began, I just want to make sure that the sound is good because there's construction. Okay, there's a construction right near to me. Okay, fine. So when Claudio began, he thought that knowing the animal, it would be enough, knowing deeply what the animal needed, it would be enough to save it. But then all the challenges began to arise. And so this was his PhD at the University of Florida. While he was doing master's and PhD, I did my master's there, and my PhD, Miriam, was in Brazil. It was in Brasilia, at the University of Brasilia, because it took me years to have the courage to go for a PhD. But then I decided that it was important for ipê because we needed environmental education to be treated as a science and not as on the side. And this, I can get into a little bit more details if anybody is interested. So we put together, this happened. It wasn't that we designed it to be like this. Many years after we had started, we were encouraged to think what had worked and how was the process of our work. So we began with a species, and from the species, I entered and completed, I added environmental education. But then the habitat had to be conserved, otherwise the animal wouldn't survive. The community had to be involved with sustainable development. The reason is that we were working in the second poorest region of São Paulo state, where the landless movement, whoever has ever heard about it, it's the strongest and most developed social movement in Brazil. So the landless people were there. So how could we raise money for conservation of a black land tamarin, of a little monkey, and not pay attention to the needs of people? And so we began to think of ways that could enrich nature, but at the same time improve their livelihoods. And this is, I'm going to show a little bit of the alternatives that we came up with. And landscape conservation, what is this? It's the planning of the whole region. How can we influence the reforestation, the recovery, regeneration of forests, where it is most needed, where the blackland tamarins are, where the jaguars go by, where the tapirs, and where the landless people can be engaged. And all of this, every time we can, which isn't that easy, we try to influence policies. So this was the model we came up with for this region in the western portion of São Paulo, where the Devil's Hill is. All of this we do with participation, because everyone knows the steps that we're taking, and research as the basis. Our mission has changed I think 3 or 4 times. In the beginning, it was to protect biodiversity in Brazil, or life and its biodiversity and so forth. And then it became, the institution became more complex. And so the mission did not portray what we were doing anymore. So we had to change our mission. And now this mission has been going on for maybe the past 8 years, and nobody wants to change it. So I think everybody's happy, but it's maybe one day we will have to change. It doesn't matter, because the mission has to reflect our principles. But our mission is to develop and disseminate innovative models of biodiversity conservation and socio-economic development through science, education, and sustainable businesses. And I'll show you why sustainable businesses are so important, because of the partnerships that today we have. So environmental education, we began first in schools, because schools are very organized already. And it was the easiest way for us to start. But it wasn't enough, because the impacts that were occurring were caused by the grown-ups. And so we wanted very badly to impact the grown-ups as well. And so we began to put together music festivals, all with ecological musics and so forth, but music festivals, artwork with nature, exhibits, plays that could go to the community in general. And the mission, I mean, our idea was to really bring people to love nature, to re-enchant them with the value of nature, because we are already, I mean, we're talking to people who are converted all the time, but how can we reach the non-converted? And so with the children, we were able in a year and a half, because I got these young people to work as guides, nature guides. And this is all, I mean, this is all a saga, because you have to write a proposal to get the funds and so forth. But I'm telling you just how we did it. And so these young people came as guides, so we were able to reach 100% of the students of all the cities and municipalities around the park, because our focus was the park. You know, and NGO cannot do, in the beginning at least, influencing policies in the big scale, because there's no way for us to be able to do so much. So anyway, so we were able to reach these people, and the results came in a faster pace than I had thought, because, for example, a politician that was a candidate for president went to the Pontal, and there were fireworks for him, and the forest began to be in fire. I mean, it caught fire, and everyone at the community went to help. Not everyone, of course, but I mean, a great mass of people went to help to extinguish the fire, and even the park guards did not know what to do with so many people. So people began really to be engaged in the protection. And the way we did it was each of these festivals, each of these events, I used to get on the microphone very easy. I mean, it's very easy to pass on the message. You are living here. I am not from here. But this forest has a value that we cannot measure it. And you are needed to protect it, because we are going to leave, but you are from here. And the whole world is looking at this forest as something as valuable as can be. And so you have to help us, and so forth. And so the pride began to come to them, and that the forest was something that they needed to be involved with. So this picture, I like it very much, because when we got there, while we were there, in fact, 10 years later, more or less, so we were already recognized by the community and so forth, but the landless movement arrived massively. And so who are we fighting for the protection of a black lion tamarin, a jaguar, a tapir, and forests? Who are we in face of such a strong and so everybody has a heart for the landless movement, because these are people who stay for a long time suffering to get a little piece of land so that they can survive. They are very poor. Some of these people were 8 years under a black plastic thing to say, you know, I'm here and I want a piece of land. And so Claudio, there's the lady who was the director at the park, and Claudio is right next to the lady. So he's my husband, and he went to talk. The guy furthest to the left is Rainha. Rainha is one of the leaders of the landless movement. So Claudio went with Lori, who was going, I mean, he's down, he's the one, I don't know how you say that in English, this position, but anyway, he's almost sitting down on the floor. So they went to talk to Rainha. How can we, you are here to occupy land, and we are here to protect nature. What can we do together? And they came up, and the others, one of them is also a leader. They came up with the idea of planting trees because they had received a piece of land that was bare, nothing. And this is a region where the heat is so high. I mean, you can get 40, 42 degrees. And so we began very naively to putting together tree nurseries. Why do I say naively? Because this wasn't part of our mission. We were taken by surprise. We will have to do something that is different. So we began to give workshops on how to plant, why plant, what are the benefits if I plant trees, and how do I do it? And so families got together, like the one especially on the here in the center, and they put together a family nursery. We got up to almost 30 family nurseries, but today we have, I think, about maybe 17 working, and these are the people who are furnishing tree seedlings, native tree seedlings for us to replant in a massive way. Because fortunately, carbon took over. Everybody wants to compensate carbon nowadays. And for us, we were already doing for 20 years because we wanted to reconnect forests and so forth. So I'll show you pictures of that. And so we began with businesses with them as well. So coffee with forest, ecological loofahs. I think I have pictures a little later. And sowing the future with women. It's interesting because the role of women in the interior is very different from the men, but they are the ones who take care of the tree seedlings. And we didn't know that. It took us a while to understand that the women had a very important role. So here are some of the first products that we had for sale were these puppets. And so one of the directors of a Danish zoo ordered them. And this was in another region in the south, which is this animal, this lion tamarin is the black-faced lion tamarin, which we also worked for more than 10 years. And just to give you an idea of the richness of the Atlantic forest, this animal was rediscovered. No, people didn't even know it existed. It was discovered in the Atlantic forest in the 1990s. So in the beginning of the 1990s. So can you imagine? I mean, it's not a worm. It's not an insect. It's a primate that was discovered in the Atlantic forest. So there are 4 lion tamarins, and we worked with 2 of them. But the black lion tamarin, for us, it's the most symbolic. So we began this work with women, and then we saw the potential, and not only with the women, but the potential of engaging communities with themes that could benefit conservation. So I got loofahs are on the left side on top. So they were making the loofahs, you know, the round ones and oval shaped. And then we began, okay, why not make them in the shapes of the animals or the flowers and so forth. And so it was a big success while it lasted. Unfortunately, it discontinued, but for private, for reasons that were not professional. So here is what we are doing today. We are changing the scenario. We want to, in the planning of the region, we want to protect all the forest fragments and link them with forests. So it's the corridors. If you have any interest, if you Google corridors for life, you will have a 7-minute video in English showing this project. And it's now taking off because of carbon, the interest in carbon. So many companies are getting to us, are contacting us, interested in investing in reforestation. And this for us was a big achievement because we were already working on that. Yes, Miriam.
Yes. I normally don't do this. I let you finish the presentation, but because the fact that you already mentioned about the growing interest on carbon, I would then now like to intervene to ask you, given that you just mentioned this again, can you share for the audience who is not familiar with that?
Okay.
What is that and how does that happen?
Okay.
How does that really happen in practice?
Okay, what happens is carbon began to be a company wants to compensate the emissions, and so they have to plant, and this is all calculated. There are firms who calculate how many trees you have to plant in order to offset your carbon emissions, and this took off in the late I think 70s. But then there was the crisis, the economic crisis. No, 2000. Wait a minute.
I think it was the late 90s.
2000. After that, 2017 or no, before 2008, more or less. And then there was an economic crisis, and it didn't evolve as was planned, but it began to take off there, and carbon began to be the way for companies to make good reports on ESG and what are they doing. ESG is environmental, social, and governance, and which is now, let's say, a standard that the banks are looking for. So for you to get a grant or something, or more funds for your projects or for your company, you have to have certain standards, and they are looking at the carbon emissions as well. And so we began doing carbon emissions together with a company that is called Biofílica, which was also put together by Claudio, because then the interest began to be so intense, and this was like 13 years ago. They put together this company, and now IP is doing a huge reforestation project with them. I mean, many of them, but they are the ones that calculate how much carbon is being compensated and so forth. So this is just in a nutshell. I am not a specialist in this, but at least I think I gave an overview of what is happening. So you can see the corridor here, and but if you link to the Corridors for Life, you will see our work better described. So one of the branches of IP is education, because with our young staff, we could see the impact of having encouraged everyone to do masters and PhDs. So now IP, I think, has about 20 PhDs, which for Brazil is a very non-common standard, and more than 20, maybe 30 masters. But we put together an education center, which began with short courses. And now we offer a master's that is recognized by the Ministry of Education. And we have an MBA as well, because we want to influence the private sector with sustainability. So this is going on. We also have a master's program in Bahia, in the state of Bahia, which is Northeast. And perhaps we will have one in the Amazon as well. We're being challenged to do that. And also we have the school boat in the Amazon. This was the first business partner ever, Grupo Martins, who is also, till today, they are partners in many of our projects, especially the education ones. They're very interested in education. And they are, how do you say, distributor of goods, of supermarkets. So they're a very big and strong company in Brazil. And the boat is about 22 years old. So they were the first ones to believe in us as a company. So we are very grateful to them. And education for me personally is the key element that makes the big difference. Because education for us is not putting together your master thesis and putting it on a shelf. Our master's is a professional master's. And what is the difference? The difference is that whatever you do can be implemented, can be put into practice, and can make a difference. And so today we have, well, more than 7,000 people students came to our short courses already, but 200 students have completed their masters with us. And in a very short time, we'll have more, because I'm just myself, I'm advising, I think, 5 right now. So they are on the verge of finishing. And MBA, it goes slower because it's every 2 years, but we already have people who have gotten their degree and are doing it, making a difference. And I am still with a dream to have a school for children. And the reason is that research shows that conservationists usually are the people who had contact with nature when they were small. And today, 70 to 80% of the population of the world live in the big cities. So who are going to be the conservationists of tomorrow? So I'm very concerned about that. I don't think I will have the time to do it. I'm not that young anymore, but I keep on telling this, making this point in all my talks, because especially within IP, because perhaps, a young person that is coming into IP will have the idea, and I will help fundraise, I will help do everything, but I cannot commit myself to doing it in the front line anymore. But anyway, so the other thing that we do that is, I didn't show a slide here, is we demand our students to go back to the communities where they did their work and share the findings. And this is something that unfortunately is not done normally. It should, but it's not. So we have in the Pontal, where we are working for more than 30 years, because that's where we began way before IP was founded. We have something called Morning with Science. And Morning with Science is somebody who finished their master's or PhD will go and give a talk. And the only thing we ask is, please don't use very complicated terms, because otherwise people won't understand. And so the Morning with Science gets the room full, and we have our headquarters in the Pontal has a room that will fit maybe 40 people, and we usually have to open the windows and people can watch from outside. So there is an interest. I think there's a little pretentious posture of scientists who think that people won't understand, so it's no use. No, that's not true. People are interested, and it's their region, it's where they are living, and it's an obligation, a moral obligation, an ethical obligation to go back with the results of the findings that you have. And so, just to give you an example, when I was doing my PhD, I did part of it with the landless movement. And so I wanted to compare people who are working with IP with families that are not working with IP. And they told us, look, I'm only going to answer this because it's IP, because I am fed up of people coming here, doing their masters and PhDs or whatever. They didn't even know what it was, but they never come back to show us what happened. And so I was one that came back to the Pontal and gave a talk in morning with science. So another thing, another way that we involve local communities is through the eco-negotiations. All of these regions have a great deal of conflict on the way the land is occupied, or different interests. The landless people have interests of surviving, of making their land work in a way that they can stay there longer. But other people are there for different reasons. You know, there's lots of exploiting nation, including. So we put everyone in a room, and this is people are very familiar with these kinds of one idea in each little paper and the colored, and then we got grants to do it. We do it every 2 or 3 years, but we have to write proposals and so forth. But one interesting thing is that an external person is very important. I already coordinated a meeting like this, and by the end, I was very tired, very, very, very tired. It was like, drains your energy because you are involved with the cause, and so it's difficult for you to coordinate. But what is the principles? So just to give you an idea of these pictures, there's the plenary, and everyone. There's talks about how things are progressing and what is happening in the region. And there are groups that form afterwards to decide the future of certain issues. For example, what can schools do to improve nature? What can research do? So there were 9 groups in this case, in the Pontal case. But in other regions, other groups form. So what are the principles behind this? And I decided to share because I thought it had a lot to do with the Earth Charter indirectly. You see, this was something that I also had to come up with, making a reflection on why were the eco-negotiations working? And so we are formed with the right side of the brain, that is, and the left side of the brain. One is more objective and rational, and the other is the value system, is the more intuitive. And so the numbers of these 2 columns begin from the bottom up, because it's like a construction. You have to construct the process as you go along with the community, with the people involved. So if you see here, on your left is the rational. Okay, you have a problem or a theme that you identified that you want to work with. And here on the left is respect, empathy, receptivity. You have to be receptive. Maybe the ideas are coming totally different from what you had gathered or you wanted. And then you reflect on the potentials. Okay, my potentials, what I see in the forest is a huge potential, but people don't. So you have to be somehow, understanding and all the time working on, you are not the actor, you are one of the actors of this process. And so everything is participatory. And so here, okay, if you don't see any potentials or richness in your region, you won't have self-esteem and pride. And so you begin, okay, do you have somebody that knows medicinal plants? All the interior of Brazil, somebody knows medicinal plants. And so you begin to, oh yes, certain, that lady or that man, he knows. And so, and people who do straw baskets, okay, or people who do other things. So you begin to bring this self-esteem. You know things that I don't, you are valuable and so forth. And then you go to the dream and vision, which you use creativity into. Dream and vision is the objectives, okay? But we don't use we try to use more words that can be comprehended by everyone. So here you use creativity, intuition, affectivity, and so forth. So this is just to give you an idea, and then you strategize. You have to be humble because sometimes your idea was not taken forward. I going back, my family, especially my kids, used to say that I'm very, of course, I never agree, but they say that I am pushy and I always want my way to be the way. And so you have to give, you have to be willing to not have control. If you do a participatory approach meeting, you have no idea of what is coming. And so your control is out. And so if you have to give responses to your donor and so forth, I don't know if you're prepared to do a participatory approach with communities, because the results can be totally different. So what I recommend, if somebody is like a controller, as my kids used to say, have your project on the side, but do it, because instead of having one project, you will have many going on at the same time, because people really I analyzed this also for my PhD. And more than 20 projects came out of the participatory approach in the eco-negotiation, or projects that I would never even think that there was a need for. And so I just decided to bring this because this is an empowerment tool that I thought was very important. And one of the meetings, which was more with the decision makers, was about the dream map. Okay, this is the Pontal region. Okay, it's the extreme western portion of São Paulo. It has this tip. And on the south, there's the Paranapanema River. And on the, I don't know, slanting coming down is the Paraná River. And this used to be covered with forest in the 50s. And in very short time, it was deforested. And you see these little patches of forest. We were able to influence policy, putting together a new protected area, these 4 bigger patches of forest that you can see here. And it's called the Black Lion Tamarin Ecological Station. It took us 7 years, but it did. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the business, importance of partnerships. You have the boat on the left, and which was the first one, as I said. But on the right, this day for us was very symbolic, because it was the first time that we were seeing a pair of Havaianas IP. Havaianas is this flip-flop, the rubber flip-flop that is sold everywhere in the world. It's a Brazilian brand, although it's called Havaianas. It's not Hawaii. I mean, it's Brazilian. And the guy on the left was the director of Havaianas, the president of Havaianas at the time. And so we were seeing it for the first time. And the guy on my right is Guilherme Leal, the owner of Natura, which is the big company of cosmetics. And it was the first time that Guilherme was visiting us. And by the end of the day, he was so taken by I think our vibration and everything, I don't know, our energy, that he said that he wanted to help IP. And how could he help IP? What were our dreams? And so at the time, our dream was to have a master's program, and we needed funds. And so he was the patron of the master's program. And then we found how interesting, how important it was to have partnerships with the business world. So we put together something that Avina at the time considered very innovative, which was a sustainable business unit at IP. The idea is to increase visibility and increase the support that we were receiving. When we started, we had this grant from Avina to start this, and they gave us 1/3 of the grant. You will only get if you have a partnership with a Brazilian company. They wanted to encourage us to do it. And I looked at my, the person, Andrea, who is the coordinator of this sustainable business unit till today. And we laughed, said, okay, let's get the rest of the money. Let's do it, because partnerships were, I mean, they were our dream, but we thought they weren't going to happen. But we were able to get the boat. So it was much more than the third that they had promised. So we got the third of the grant as well. So the idea was institutional development, sustainable businesses, and communication. So this was done in 2003. This is just to give you an idea. This was the first collection of the Havaianas IP, and they till today. So this is maybe 2003. This is about 18 years of partnership. They give us 7% of money that we can spend in strengthening the institution. So it's not how do you say? It's not for a project specific. As said, Claudia and I,
no, we have an issue with the internet. Well, let's wait for Suzana to come back. I think I'm gonna ask her to switch off her camera if she hears me. She's gonna come back. Oh, there you are. Suzana, there was I think you are back here. So the internet was not working. So you're muted now. So if you can open your mic. So
okay.
Okay, so Suzana, can you share again your screen?
Yeah,
your presentation, and then I think while you present, well, anyway, we can try.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but
Okay.
Am I back?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let me go one back. So why is communication so important, media? Because we need, for us to get the support, for us to, not only the support, it's more than the support. It's for us to communicate the mission of why conservation is so important. We need to be seen and known. And so people think, oh, and I say this to our team at IP, when we receive an award or when we are in the media, we cannot think that this is for us. It's for the cause, and the cause is more important than anything. And so communication, we use it national, international for publications. In publications, we do articles in local journals, media in general, participation in lives. During the pandemic, we were so solicited with lives and interviews and so forth. And we use magazines, local magazines. So it's not only scientific papers, it's all sorts of publications that we need to reach different audiences. And the awards are also like that, because then we can also get to the media in a different way. So just to give you an idea, there's many, because our team all all received a lot of awards. And this was another symbolic day, which is the Whitley Award in England. So Laurie Cullen, there's on the left, Edward Whitley, the person who came, put together this award. Laurie Cullen received the Gold Award, Princess Anne, and Claudia received the Senior Award. So it was a very, very symbolic day for us. We were all crying with emotion and so forth. And so just a few more awards. Princess Anne again, giving Patricia Medici, another of our staff, the award and so forth. And one of the things scientifically very important is that the black-line tamarin got from extremely endangered, critically endangered to endangered. This can seem not so big according to IUCN Red List, but it is because during all those 30, 40 years, all the pressures were enormous all the time. And so all the other regions of Brazil were decreasing and getting worse. And the black-line tamarin was considered to have more hope of long-lasting. Influencing policies, these are the four fragment forests that are now protected in the Tamarin Ecological Station. And the Whitley Award in 2019, the third generation, Gabriela Rezende, received the Whitley Award. And so for us, for me, Claudio, this is the legacy, the major legacy that we're leaving. It's the team that is being strengthened and so I'm getting to conclusion. We have integrated programs that are interdisciplinary and that make all that take care of all the details in the different ways. And also we have the education center that shares everything that is learned in the field. And so it's theory with practice, is social with environmental and economic and so forth. And so a little bit of the numbers. Today we have 6 million trees planted, 15,000 people reached in average every year, 7,300 people trained, scholarships, benefited families 200, masters that graduated, 6 fauna species, but we have big dreams and our goals are to increase all of this. And so I put a beautiful statement here based on the Earth Charter. I don't know if I can read it because let me try to change your position here just a minute. Wait, okay, I did it. Okay, we are the earth, the people, the plants and the animals, the drops of the oceans, the respiration of the forests, and the flux of the seas. We have adhered to a shared responsibility to protect and restore the earth, to enable wise and equitable use of natural resources, as well as to achieve ecological balance and new social, economic, and spiritual values. In our entire diversity, we are unity. Okay. So now, how do I go back? This is our team, just to give you, and this is my contact. If you are interested.
Thank you so much, Suzana.
Now let me try to not share the screen anymore.
Actually, if it's still there, let's hold it, and then can you go back to that page that you shared your mission?
Oh, okay.
It's interesting to come back to one thing there on the intersection of your work that, as far as I remember, it was.
I'm sorry, I have to do it like this because I.
No, don't worry.
Okay.
So we are going to open the floor for questions, of course, comments. Any comment and question? I first want to express gratitude really to you for sharing so much with us of your work. And one specific question, because before we go into the mission, to clarify in terms of the areas, the geographic areas where you work. Is it limited to the Atlantic forest, Mata
No.
Atlântica? Okay, so Mata Atlântica, for those who are not in Brazil, are this line of forest between the territory of Brazil and the Atlantic Ocean. It's called in Portuguese Mata Atlântica, so the Atlantic forest. So, and I can see that you have a specific focal area of work there near São Paulo, in Mata Atlântica. But where are the other geographical areas of the work you do in Brazil?
Yeah, we started in the western portion of São Paulo, and then our second, maybe the second site, as we call, was where we put together our education center. But then we were invited to go to the Amazon through a project to protect anavilhanas, to do the plan for anavilhanas. And then we stayed, this is the Rio Negro near Manaus. And now we have a big project that also has an English version called LIRA, L-I-R-A. And LIRA is a project that is spread throughout Amazonia in protected areas. So we work together with the government to increase the potential of the protected areas to survive in a very nice way. And LIRA is now working in twice the size of Germany in terms of area of protected areas.
In the Amazon.
In the Amazon, all in the Amazon. So different states and different regions. In the Pantanal, there's the researcher called Patrícia Médici, who also received many awards. She works with tapirs. And in fact, she has a TED Talk, a real TED Talk, because I did a TED Talk in Brazil, so it's TEDx. But she did a real TED Talk, and you can Google her, Patrícia Médici. And Patrícia has this TED Talk that had more than 1 million views. And so Patrícia works with tapirs, and her husband works with armadillos and anteaters. And so they are there, period. And then they are also in the Cerrado, in another, what Patrícia, for example, an outcome of her research was that they analyzed tapirs that had been run over by cars, killed by car accidents. And they found that 100% of them were contaminated with agrotoxics. And so now she's doing exams on people to see the effects of agrotoxics, because the Pantanal is a region where soy is taking over, and and soy uses a lot of agrotoxics. So the reason I'm mentioning this is sometimes you begin with a mission to protect a species, and it's deviated by the needs. And if you don't look at the needs, if you just want to broom it, to cover it, with your carpet and pretend that it's not there, it will just increase. So we need to face everything that we find. And so when we say that the black-line salmon got from critically endangered to endangered, it's a huge achievement, because unfortunately, the world is not, more than I do, the world is not favoring conservation as it should. So this is...
Okay, so IP is working in the Atlantic forest, in the Amazon, in the Pantanal, in the Cerrado, which is in the middle of Brazil. And where is the education center located?
Look, the education center is very easy to get to. It's 1.5 hours from the city of São Paulo, from the capital. It's in a small city called Nazaré Paulista, but we are in the rural area. So it's a beautiful place, as you could see in the picture. It's a lovely setting. Waverly has been there many times. And that is where the classes take. Now we have virtual classes as well because of the pandemics. We learned how to have classes in different ways. But in the beginning, it was all presence. And so in September, I'm going to give, I always give the first module because it's full of values and ethics and so forth. So it's environmental education and ethics. So I'm going to the new class of our Center for Masters program is going to be in September, and I'm going to be there for the whole week. So they have modules that are in presence, but they also have ones that are virtual.
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting in your mission that you clearly articulate there that you work at that intersection between science, education, and sustainable business. So this work of academia, I would say environment education with the community and with the business. So when you said that there's of course the carbon market is growing and the companies that are very interested in compensating their carbon emissions, you're referring to mostly companies within Brazil?
No, international.
Mostly international?
The first one was Mercado Livre, which is Argentinian, and they have Pachama. They also, they have I think an NGO that is linked to them. And so the first one who did in a big scale. But right now there are companies from all over the world interested. And some of them don't understand the complexities, because our project is expensive. Because why? We take care of the trees for 3 years until they are totally independent. So we take care of, ants and fertilize the soil or whatever is needed for the trees to survive. And so it's sometimes more expensive than others that are, okay, we'll plant trees and so forth. It's not that they're not doing it seriously, but we take it very seriously. And we also have around 100 different species of the Atlantic forest being planted, because we want to imitate nature as much as possible. And the one thing that we're doing that is quite innovative, and I think that's why one of the reasons we received this award in the business world, is we're monitoring the biodiversity that is coming back to the corridors. So 20% of the species of the trees that are found in our corridors were not planted by people. So this is an indication that dispersers like birds and insects, whatever, or even ants, tapirs are bringing back the biodiversity. And also there are, there's a little device that you put in the forest, and that it checks every, I don't know how many minutes or hours, all the sounds, and it's able, I was so fascinated by this, it's able to identify which birds or which frogs were there. And it gives you a list. So you are in your home with all the comfort. Imagine when Claudio was doing his PhD, he woke up at 4 a.m. to be able to be at the forest before the animals came out of the little den that they sleep in the hole of the tree, so that they can be, protected from predators. But Claudio had to do this, taking, notes on his little machine or whatever. Now you can be at home. Laurie's PhD was with jaguars, and with a little collar or whatever, the tamarins also had collars, but with a chip, he was able to know where, the jaguar was. So technology is helping tremendously. But now, for example, I'll give you one more story. I don't know if I have time for stories, Miriam, you tell me.
Yeah, you of course you do, but can you take off the presentation now? Share.
Oh, yes.
Stop sharing
Oh,
the
okay.
screen.
Because you asked me to put on the mission side.
It's because
Okay.
I wanted people to
Stop
remember.
share.
But
Yeah, sure.
also before the stories, can I ask you this question on, or maybe making also a comment on your presentation for someone who is in another part of the world, someone who is trying to do something similar to what you have done somewhere else. Your advice and comment from what I took from your presentation, but I would like you to expand a little bit more on that. I saw that you mentioned the importance of being able to adapt all the time, being flexible and adapt, and never consider not working with the local community, just coming with your own plan.
Yes.
And also not consider not working with the private sector. So it's kind of being that bridge maker, see,
Yeah.
as a key component or key elements for making that work being so successful. Is that right? So can you share with us, so if I am someone somewhere in other parts of the world looking at your experience and try to emulate some of it, what would be your biggest advice of, okay, what are the things that I should not miss?
One thing that I learned was start small. Don't be ambitious in the beginning, because the reason, I mean, the fact that IPE is now a big NGO recognized is a consequence. It wasn't our mission. It wasn't our aim. It happened. It happened because we encouraged and we strengthened a group of young people that were as dreamers and as crazy as we were. And they began their own projects, all guided by us. And nowadays they guide others. But if you start small with something that is tangible, you will find that our strength is humongous, is much bigger than we think it is. And because, of course, when I give a presentation, I only talk about the successes because I want people to be inspired. But there were many, many unsuccesses, many, like writing proposals and being promised things and then getting to the end. And people, there was one with the boat. There was a big international company, and we never had any partnership before. And they promised us the boat. And they were going to equip the boat, and we got to the community and everything was being, and then they gave it to another NGO without even giving a phone call. How do you select somebody that is going to be a partner? This is also something that I could go on and on, but you have to see the values of the people, the intention, if it's a real intention or if it's greenwashing. Even with the ESG, there's so much greenwashing nowadays. So you have to feel the atmosphere of where you're getting into. And so when I began with environmental education, I began in a very naive way. I was a designer. I didn't know how to do it. And then I began to read about environmental education. How did people start? There was another project with the Golden Lion Tamarin in Brazil, Luann Dietz, and her husband, Jim, who was very similar the case. He was studying the animals and she was doing environmental education. She had a lot of experience and she helped me in the beginning. So get guides, get people who have done something that they can also help with ideas. But she helped me like, okay, don't do competitions between schools because they already compete terribly. If you're going to do like for many years, we did agendas, like each each month, it was a drawing of a kid. Don't choose the best schools. Choose 4 months for each school if you have three schools in the region, you see. So things like that were very simple, but that make your life easier. So I write a lot about lessons learned of things that didn't work. People don't usually share what didn't work, but I think it's you learn more sometimes of what were failures than from the successes. And recently there's a big donor that I'm still looking at it like, okay, one day perhaps. And they came and they asked, you can only send a proposal if you're invited. And I sent a proposal, I was invited. And then in the end, they said, oh, IPE does too many things. You don't have focus, you know, and what can I say? I mean, of course I have focus, come on. I mean, but you see, so do something that is tangible. And because when you do something like, okay, some people are working with, I don't know, garbage or whatever, or with people who are planting, recovering a little brook or something. Do something that you can see and that you can involve people. And then when you begin to involve local people and so forth, sometimes it takes off in a very neat way. And then our ideal would be that all the community projects would not depend on IPE anymore. So this is the real empowerment. It's not easy because, you see, we have a responsibility. I was educated. Why do I speak English the way I do? Because I was a privileged girl, you know, I was brought up in a privileged environment. So I have a worldview that local people sometimes don't have. And so I get to the Amazon sometimes and I can see that place, if it was remodeled, they could get tourists here, and then the thing comes to me in a very natural way. And I began to tell, have you ever thought of doing this? Our projects in the Rio Negro right now are magnificent. We have a partnership with LinkedIn, and we found entrepreneurs in the Amazon, and we encouraged them with seed money. Seed money is it's like Mohammed Yunus, you know, like 2,000 reais, you know, $2,000, I think, 2,000 something, is enough for them to take off. And so sometimes so little that is needed. And sometimes there's no money, only energy. If you put energy in something, it will flourish. There was one project that we made a competition in the schools. If the school that brings the most, the biggest number of adults to watch a talk about the park will get a special visit to the park. This was only energy, no cost at all. I spoke to 100%, I think, maybe not 100, but a great mass of adults in the region about the park, and only energy.
Point. Okay, thank you. So let me now open the floor for question, answers, comments anyone may have. So you can just raise your hand, but I would like to first give the floor to Vaveli, who is here and help us put this together.
Thank you so much, Suzana. You are so inspiring. Every time I listen to you, I get my goosebumps because your passion goes wherever you talk. And this is something that I would like to highlight and to comment about your presentation, because I'm from academia originally, and most of the time we plan all the things we're going to do. But what I could see from your presentation is that the passion goes first, because you show lots of things that you thought after, and that you come after with the methods that you use it to do it. So I would like you to explain us a little about how does intuition and this side goes first from the methodology of the academy that is so high, so difficult sometimes to give. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. It was really interesting. When I began with work with environmental education, I didn't know anything theoretically. I began to read it as I went along. And when I got to the US and I did my master's, I found that lots of the things that I had done were in the literature to be correct, were already being done, which I felt good about it because I really used the intuition and the good sense, do this instead of that and so forth. But I believe that the nice thing is to put the two together, the intuition and the studies, because then you grow tremendously. So many ideas come from other parts of the world, like Africa. There was a project in Portugal that I saw once, and I got a lot of ideas and so forth. So you have to be inspired. You don't need to create everything, And there's one thing that you mentioned about reflecting after you do it. I totally encourage people to do that. I'm a doer. I like to do. I feel energized when I'm doing things. But you have to sometimes stop and look back and then reflect what worked and what did not work. That table that I showed you with the right side and the left side of the brain, I have another one with when you control, you have a limited number of projects, but when you encourage people, you will have much more. And when you control, everything depends on you. And when you encourage, the responsibility is shared and so forth. So all of this came because I had to reflect on what had worked and what had not. And so I saw a metaphor once and I use it. It's like a bamboo. The bamboo grows and then it stops growing and it makes that thing thicker. I don't know how you say it. And a ring that makes it thicker so that it can continue to grow. And the process of putting together a project and stopping to reflect is similar, because when you continue, you're going to correct the mistakes that you have done in the first phase, and then you can continue in another basis. If you are the owner of the truth, everything that I do is right, and there's no question, and you get mad at when people criticize or suggest things, then I believe that the losing person is going to be you and not the others. See, so of course there's always ego. I mean, there's always saying that there isn't is not true, but you have somehow to work in a balance, and doing things is very nice, but at the same time reflecting on the lessons learned. And many of the papers that I have published are exactly thinking about the processes. The processes are important. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to make a comment or ask a question to Suzana? I invite you just to raise your hand or write in the chat box.
Come on, it will be a pleasure. Okay, so while people are thinking, let me just tell you a little story. I showed a picture of Gabriela receiving the award, the Whitley Award. And the reason, and she's the third generation, the reason is the black pine tamarins, they use the trees, the holes in the trees to every night sleep. The whole family gets in. And in the new forest, the corridors, they don't have the holes because the holes are a symbol of a tree that is old. So another animal did it, or nature somehow worked its way. And so what she did, and she's up there in that picture with a little wooden box, is that she put the wooden box as a protection for them. And they did not use it for a long time. And then she found that they had to have the smell of the lion tamarins. And so when she, because every so and so months, they have to get the animals and change the collar because it gets, the batteries get bad. And so when she did it, she got the smell of in a cloth or something, and she put it inside, and they began to use it. So these things, I mean, they are daring. In an academic world, there's so much, and I love the academic world. Please don't misunderstand me. It has a huge role. It has an extremely important role, but there's a lot of limitations on what you can and what you can't do. And there's a, innovation all the time, not all the time, but innovation depends a little bit on the daring kind of, let's try something else to see if it works. And so I wanted to tell you this little story.
Okay, Luis says his mic is not working, but he would like to write a question. Among all these difficulties that you got through with IP, what's the one you think that was the hardest one to overcome? And what did you learn out of it?
In the beginning, I had personal, my family for me is the most important thing in the world. And when we arrived at the Pontao, a house had been promised and it did not materialize. There was a big fight between the environmental and the engineering portions of a company that was going to give us a house to live. So we went to live in a shack in the forest. And I have to say that I wasn't used to living in a shack. As I said, I was kind of privileged all the way. And so I felt so unhappy. I almost packed my bags and with my 3 kids and left almost many times. I looked at Claudio and the tears came down my eyes. I said, how did you dare bring me to this end of the world with no comfort at all, and so forth. And years later, Luis, I realized that if I had gotten that house, I would not have ended up working with environmental education because I would be in the city. I would probably have been teaching English in school because this was how I got in touch with many of the young people who came to work as guides. I was a teacher for a while because the English teacher went to another city to get married. And so I would have been there, put in a calm environment and done nothing. And because I went to live in the forest, but I only realized this years later. So personally, I think I only began to work with environmental education when we were able to build a new house inside the park, which is the best house of the park till today. And my family was all set. And then I put all the energy into environmental education. And this is something interesting. This is another thing that I think we're privileged. When you find a purpose in life, the new generation is working for purpose. There's a study, it's not so new in Brazil. There was a study with young people, and they don't exactly want richness. It's not the first place. In my generation, it was richness and success. You had to be successful. Your family expected that of you. but they wanted something that made a difference. So I believe that today the young generation has this very clear, and so, you know, I think that in our education system at IP, we encourage everyone to find something that they really love to do their final work, and not something that is going to be good for me. And this is also something that is common, unfortunately, in the academic world. You know, okay, you're going to do your PhD on something, a research that I need you to do. There is a little bit of that in IP when the funds come from to do something specific, but then we are very open with the students. But if you can encourage people to find their talent and put their talent, it doesn't matter if it's music, mathematics, everyone has a talent, but if you can encourage the person to, you know, flourish in something that will make a difference collectively, not for yourself. It's not my bank account that is going to get. That is a consequence, but it's not the aim. I hope I have given you a little.
Thank you, Suzana. Alicia?
You're welcome.
Hello, and thank you, Suzana. What a wonderful experience you've shared with us. And I'm wondering, because many of us here, you know, are part of the Earth Charter Network. We work a lot in terms of ethics and changing worldviews. And sometimes some people may think that is not tangible enough, but we also can say that it is important. So how do you see the work with ethics and these things that are more intangible in your work? How is that interplay with what you do in terms of more tangible, you know, going and, you know, planting trees and protecting, and working in more intangible, like changing worldviews, working in ethics, promoting some ethic and values?
Alicia, ethics for me is the basis of everything that we do. We have a creed at IP. This was in one of our strategic planning, maybe 10 years ago or something. We were in a crisis. There were so many people complaining about things, and especially guided by one or two. Just one second. Okay, and so I'm sorry, I missed. I had to ask for the door to be opened. So I was saying about ethics. So we put together the creed of IP, and this was in the middle of a crisis. And the creed expresses all the values. If you don't abide to these, you will unfortunately have to look for a place that is more your kind of profile and not ours. But ethics for me is the basis of everything that life depends on. I have been writing about love. It's a word that in the academic world is considered to be very, I don't know, ridiculous or something. But for me, it's if we were educated to really love life, how could I accept, like in Brazil, 33 million people right now are with no security of having their next meal. I mean, poverty is taking over again. We already had this over, and it came back. How would I be able to cope with the destruction of nature? Because if we were educated to love life in general, our attitude would be different. So I've been writing about this, and of course people admire, but my husband, who is a Darwinist and he thinks, that people are moved when they are in need and when the catastrophe arrives. I want, there are two ways that you learn. In Portuguese, it rhymes. One is through pain, dor, and the other one is through amor, love. And so I would love that we would change and adopt a living principle based on love and not on pain. So, I don't need to wait for the climate catastrophes to happen for me to be more cautious, more careful on what I am producing, how I'm producing, how I'm consuming, and so forth. So I don't know if I answered your question, but for me, it's extremely important.
So building on that, in your teaching, you said your first course is on ethics, environmental ethics. Yeah, I encourage you to take a look at their charter and start using that in that. But how would you approach this, the need to put our energy or our attention into the importance of ethics when we go into, okay, the work here is about reforestation, and how do you link planting 10 trees or 100 trees, and making some of the values and ethics behind it more visible?
I think we have to walk the talk. We have to be what we somehow speak about. So when we began our work in the Pontal, it was about the environment, period. It was saving nature. And then we saw that saving nature depended on people's attitudes and also in the improvement of their lives. It's linked. The thing is, we departmented everything, but it's all linked. And so I will only have a very healthy life if the planet is healthy, and so I depend on that, but it's more than dependence. I have to celebrate the beauty of the system in order to be happy on participating in it, in the whole process. And why does Claudio think that it's idealistic, my view? Because we usually go through the egoistical kind of choices. Okay, what is good for me? What is good for my kids? What is good for the family? But when you find that you are capable of or improving or destroying or not improving, doing the other way around, you get strength inside. And so why not choose a constructive way, to participate in the well-being of life, be it nature, be it human. So it's so linked to environmental education. What is environmental education? What is the difference between environmental education and education? When it got to the 70s and the big catastrophes began to happen, there were some thinkers that, okay, they came up with reflections like we were talking about. What have we done with the education system that has brought us these outcomes? What do we need to change? And this was perhaps, I can't say that it was the first time, but at least it was emphasized that the value system had to be included, not only the rational. So passing on knowledge is the traditional way of teaching. There's a professor there in front, he or she knows everything, and you go there and you write notes and then you go back home. Okay, this is great, but what about your background? You come with a baggage of things, your value system is there. People, I see Milton is probably from the Western portion of the world, right? I believe. And so my kids used to go to, when we lived in the States, with English as a second language. And the lady was she was a very special professor, because she took care that the different cultures were respected. So when you speak to a child, look in my eyes, you cannot, I'm talking to you, you have to look at my eyes. It depends on the culture. The kid was taught at home not to look in the eyes because it's disrespectful. So the diversity of the cultures needs to be included in all our processes of learning. And so maybe I deviated from your question, but for me, all of this makes and adds to the richness that we, in a way, we are pretentious and say, my way of living is the best. And so I have to, and nowadays, I mean, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, it's all money and concentration of power and money. And it began way before. I'm not being fair. It began way before. But anyway, now it's what is valued, but that is not the way it should be. What should be valued is life. And life means everything. Life is the worm that will become a butterfly. It's it will only become a butterfly if we allow it. So here we are. We can become butterflies, we can somehow, we can bloom like an ipe tree, but it depends on the education process that we have the privilege or not of having. And so I just to finalize this thought, the responsibility of education is tremendous, because you can just make people, everybody alike, which is very easy for you. You get to a room, you don't care who is there. But then the richness is to pay attention to all the diversities. And the diversity is in the, nowadays it's so popular to talk about diversity of race and so forth. It should have been always like that, and not now.
Indeed. Let me go back to these points you have made, because IPE, in your experience over the last 2 to 3 decades on partnerships, building partnerships. So in the Charter, there is also a sentence there that highlights the importance of good governance, or good environmental governance requires partnership between government, civil society, businesses, and etc. You have been doing that. But I would like to ask you 2 questions. Very often, there is a sort of uneasiness with civil society organizations to engage with the private sector, with the business, for good reasons, or for whatever reasons, like, there is an uneasiness to engage with the private sector. So you mentioned a partnership with Havaianas, and I think Grupo Martins, but you also have partnerships with other big companies, Danone, Faber-Castell. Can you share with us, what are those partnerships? What's your role, IPE? What's the role of the private sector? And how this partnership is adding value to the work of IPE and to the companies? So let me stay there, and I'll come back to the other question later.
Okay. It has to be a win-win. It has to be, the company has to feel that it's a benefit for them. And we have to feel that it's also a benefit. We have at IPE a group to study case by case. And the reason is there are many people that I really don't want to be partners with, many companies. If the principle is wrong, you see, if they are doing agrotoxics, if they are doing cigarettes, if they're doing drinks that are not good, healthy, and so forth, I don't want to be partners, but sometimes because we created an organization that is horizontal, sometimes I am outvoted and they win. And I'm not very proud, but we put together an organization that we believe that everyone has the right to speak and everyone has, and then sometimes I am not very comfortable, but so far, I think there was one special case in that. And to tell you the truth, it's so, why is it important for us to have partnerships with the business world? Okay, let me begin that way. Why did we put together the Sustainable Business Unit? Partnerships with the governments, the technical body of the governments is very good. Usually they got in through an exam. These are best professionals. They are really good and committed and so forth. But the heads, they move every 4 years. Every 4 years, there's a whole bunch of new people, sometimes that know nothing about the topic that you're dealing with. And so with the technical body, we get along really well, but not always. The continuation is sometimes at risk because of the 4-year change. With the companies, there are advantages. These usually they have continuity, and usually they have a mission that is to produce something. And as I said, it's not that easy, but it is worthwhile because an NGO can do more if it has the support, and not only the support, but the sometimes the lessons learned from them. So they are good in certain things that we are not. And so why not join? The guy who put together Avina had this figured out in his mind. His name is Schmidt-Heine. And Schmidt-Heine had the idea that the passion of the entrepreneur, as Waverly mentioned that I'm a passionate person. I am I'm totally dedicated to a cause and feel very privileged about it. But I don't have the techniques of doing certain things that a business person has. And another thing, the business world invests a lot in failures. Okay, let's try this. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. This chunk of money is for this. NGO can never do this, never. NGOs can only be successful. They cannot make mistakes. So if you have a support from people who understand this, somehow you sometimes can dare more than if you only do what is that you know is going to have a good result. So there are advantages and there are disadvantages. Like one of our partners is Petrobras Ambiental. Petrobras is the Brazilian petroleum company. So many people say, how can you speak about the environment and so forth and be a partner with Petrobras Ambiental? There's another side to it, because Petrobras, only people that have support from Petrobras Ambiental are people who went through a big screening, a tremendous screening. They are very demanding on their partners. So it's almost like a seal of quality, okay? But I went to a talk with the president of Petrobras when we were beginning the partnership. And the guy said, okay, whoever talks about not being good to have a partnership with us, please pay attention. Your clothes depend on petroleum. The seats where you're seated, everything, the way you got here. So the world is based on this. Let's make it the best that we can with it. And let's try to do the right thing. So, it's not that it convinced me totally, but at least it soothed my uneasiness, let's put it this way. But you have to pay attention to how they act with people and with the environment, because if they are unethical, I would say run away from.
Yeah. So I'll go back to thank you so much, Suzana. Can you share with us like specifically what is that? What is an example of that partnership? So you have a partnership with Danone or with someone else in the Amazon, for instance. Are most of these partnerships around carbon offsetting or
No.
carbon compensation? So what are a few other examples of specific examples of what is that partnership? What does you do, IP, and what does the specific business doing?
Okay. One partnership, because of Ashoka, that I'm a fellow, McKinsey in Brazil gave us support for two big projects. One was our university, our master's program. They did the whole study pro bono because Guilherme Leal was interested. Of course, Guilherme Leal is of interest to them because it's a huge company and he's very famous. So they did it pro bono. So this is an example of, for us, it was a win-win, and for them too, because then, of course, they did do it for Guilherme. Guilherme will somehow have a portion of his business working with McKinsey or something like that. So it can be like that. It can be a pro bono, and it can be something that they also offer their expertise. LinkedIn, for example, that is very recent. I went to see the projects that they are supporting in the Amazon. First of all, they put like a headhunter in the US to find out who was serious about the environment in Brazil. They wanted to have a partnership in Brazil. And they came to us. This was, for us, I mean, this was already the celebration of the celebration. When would I think that IP would be a selected partner, that somebody would come to, like choose us to be a partner with? This was unthought of for many years. So they came to us, and then what they offered was they wanted to support a project in the Amazon, and we came up with the project. We always have a talk with the business people to understand what are the themes that that moves them, and so we selected entrepreneurs in the Rio Negro, maybe 100 of them, 100 something. And then from there, 40, and from the 40, 13 or 14 got seed money, as I mentioned. But all of them, at least the 50 something, they received courses on marketing, how to monetize your product. Okay, I have bio jewelry, okay, jewelry made of seeds and so forth. How do I put a price on them? How do I package them? And so they received maybe 3 or 4 courses in different themes that were that they could benefit from. And then from there, we selected, I think, 13 or 14, and I visited about 8 very recently. And it's amazing because with so little, so much can be changed, And they now, one has a restaurant, and we helped guide. And what does LinkedIn also do? They offer a possibility of professionals to go there with their expertise. And so they gave the money, but they also have the opportunity of, okay, I'm good in marketing, and this group needs the marketing for their products. So I can help them on improving their product. So I saw restaurant, a lodging, beautiful, beautiful handicrafts in wood. And all of this is there in the middle of the Amazon. They all know how to do it. I mean, not know how to do it. We also helped them. But in a way, the potential is there. The entrepreneurship is there, but they don't have the opportunities. So this is the part that I like the most. With Danone, it was different. Danone began with one project. It was you plant a little tree, a little seed inside the cups, you know, the plastic cups of Danone, and then IP gave all the rules, or not the guides, the guidelines of how to plant, where to plant, and so forth. And so this was the first project, and then they increased. Okay, this was successful. They increased, and then they have a property. We did something that one of our researchers is very good. It's the carbon, the DNA of it's really, I mean, he's a researcher. The DNA in the soil in to see how is the soil improving or not improving, where Danone is planting strawberries or whatever. The sugar, the strawberries, the milk. What is the interest of Danone? They want to know if in 10 years they will have the quality that they have today or improved. And so we are helping them to monitor this. And this was so successful that they took it internationally. And then now they have a farm, property, and we are doing the work with them on this kind of monitoring. So it all depends. Each one has a story, but some, like the Petrobras Ambiental, the petroleum, they give the grants. They want us to put their name in every single thing that we do. They want publicity. It's explicit, it's open. This is what I want from you. I want you to recognize Petrobras. So if you're going to give an interview, put your T-shirt, because the reporters never allow you to speak about the supporters. Put your T-shirt with Danone. I don't know if you saw, but I have a T-shirt shirt today that has a parrot, you see, because I was coming to talk about nature. So send your message as you can, but each one of our partners has a different story. And carbon came in the last maybe 3 years. Before that, all our story was with different aspects. We went to Havaianas 3 times. This is another important detail. We went 3 times to Havaianas trying partnerships because they had animals, the African animals and Asian animals they had, and not Brazilians. And we said, you know, okay, we are living in a mega diverse country. Why not value what is ours? I mean, you are a Brazilian company. It got to marketing, and marketing never took to the president. When Juscelino Martins, one of the owners of Grupo Martins, took the project to the president of Havaianas, because he's the biggest buyer, he sells in all supermarkets in 100% of the municipalities of Brazil. He said, there's a beautiful project that you could see and so forth. And this was how we were able to speak to the president, because there are many layers. You don't get to the president. And then the president came to us and said, how did this never get to my hands? I want this project. And so they give us 7%, and it's unrestricted funds. That's the word I wanted to remember at the time that I spoke about Havaianas. It's unrestricted. So we can have like auditing. Nobody wants to pay for auditing, but everybody wants you to be audited. And so you have to strengthen your institution. You have to get softwares on accountability of the financial portion and so forth. Nobody wants to pay for that. And we have also, with the Havaianas, we have an endowment, small endowment, but we have, because if something tragic happens, or with, something legal appears, then we're safe with a small fund. But we began with nothing. We began only with I want to stress this. We began just wanting to have a nice work done.
Mhm. So to emphasize, companies or different business groups come and engage in a partnership with you in different ways. There's multiple ways in which we could, or someone working in conservation and education could engage with the businesses. One could be just receiving a grant, as in the case you mentioned about LinkedIn, and I think Petrobras was receive a grant, you implement a project, and you promote, of course, the image of the grant or of the sponsor, put it that way, of the project. Or some engage in different ways, such as the example of Danone, that they do some part of the implementation, I understood, and you do another one. The project with LinkedIn that you mentioned, is it the Lira project, right, in the Amazon?
No, it's another one.
Uh-huh.
The Lira, we received grants from BNDES, the Development Bank of Brazil. What they did was the Moore Foundation in the US, first USAID in the US was the first, and also GIZ from Germany. Because you see, the Amazon attracts funds from the Amazonian Fund. Amazonian Fund is money from Norway, from Germany, and other countries. And so the money was there with BNDES, and the Moore Foundation in the US, they are very involved in the Amazon. And so what the Moore Foundation advised us to do was go to BNDES and have 3-for-1. So it's matching funds. It was quite a huge grant. I don't want to speak about this because it can disencourage people. It took us ages to get to Moore Foundation. It took us ages to get to BNDES. So don't think of that as a goal, okay? This was a consequence. And the Moore Foundation understood that we had to get this grant, which was humongous. We had to be very good in the administration. So they gave us portion of that grant was to improve our administration skills, because we weren't prepared for that. It was an NGO, and so nowadays we can get big grants because we got the apparel for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. We were all very happy to hear you and the many examples you have. I learned from this project you have with LinkedIn and Amazon that it's also not just about conservation education or environment education. What you're doing or partially doing with this small business or companies in the Amazon is enhancing their capacity, their business capacity, enhancing their skills to undertake their business in the Amazon region, to continue to do what they do, but in a more effective way. So it has this social dimension of that too. So at least that's one thing that I learned. We have a few people here from the SOCA Institute in Amazon. They're located in Manaus, and they work also with environment education. And I'm sure they will be very much willing to follow up with you in
it will be a pleasure.
Various projects you are doing there.
And Miriam, somebody asked about having videos in Portuguese. Yes, there are many. I mentioned the Corridors for Life because I'm talking English, but there are many. Globo Rural, Globo Ecologia, all of them have done lots of videos with the corridors, with the, we have a project in our bases near São Paulo, where we have our education center, called Sowing Water. And this is the Petrobras, one of the projects that Petrobras funds for us. But Sowing Water, so anyway, there's lots of films that were done with these projects, and even the taper and so forth. So in Portuguese, there are many. If you put the names of the projects or IP, you will find. But the English ones, some unfortunately don't last. When you go and if you didn't save them, you know, they disappear. But the Corridors for Life is there. It was one of the awards that Lori got from the Rolex, the Rolex Award. And so they came to Brazil and they did it, and it's very nicely done. So I encourage.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Suzana, for being here with us today. And thank you everyone for joining us. I suppose, and I hope that everyone will come out of this conversation today thinking more about how to make these important linkages between education, environment education, conservation, but not just inside that silo, but really enhancing our capacity to imagine and create linkages with research work, but also with partnerships with the local communities and the business sectors to enhance our capacity to do what we need to do, right? Thank you so much, everyone.
And thank you so
Suzana.
much. And I just want to say one sentence before I leave. I want to congratulate you all for the Earth Charter. I believe that the principles, the pillars, everything that is there stands for the future of the planet that I envision to be the one that I want. So thank you so much for being engaged.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. All the best.